Tonight, we drift into a quieter world where a poor miller's boy finds a kingdom built by cats, where 3 army surgeons trade their bodies for a dangerous night, where a willful child tests the bounds of earth and grave, and where wise folks chase folly down winding country roads. So close your eyes and let the stories carry you far away into the quiet of the night. The 2 kings' children. There was once on a time a king who had a little boy, of whom it had been foretold that he should be killed by a stag when he was 16 years of age. And when he had reached that age, the huntsman once went hunting with him. In the forest, the king's son was separated from the others, and all at once he saw a great stag, which he wanted to shoot, but could not hit. At length, he chased the stag so far that they were quite out of the forest. And then, suddenly, a great tall man was standing there instead of the stag, and said, "It is well that I have thee. I have already ruined 6 pairs of glass skates with running after thee, and have not been able to get thee." Then he took the king's son with him and dragged him through a great lake to a great palace. And then he had to sit down to table with him and eat something. When they had eaten something together, the king said, "I have 3 daughters. Thou must keep watch over the eldest for 1 night, from 9 in the evening till 6 in the morning. And every time the clock strikes, I will come myself and call. And if thou then givest me no answer, tomorrow morning thou shalt be put to death. But if thou always givest me an answer, thou shalt have her to wife." When the young folks went to the bedroom, there stood a stone image of Saint Christopher, and the king's daughter said to it, "My father will come at 9 o'clock, and every hour till it strikes 3. When he calls, give him an answer instead of the king's son." Then the stone image of Saint Christopher nodded its head quite quickly, and then more and more slowly, till at last it stood still. The next morning, the king said to him, "Thou hast done the business well, but I cannot give my daughter away. Thou must now watch a night by my second daughter. And then I will consider with myself whether thou canst have my eldest daughter to wife. But I shall come every hour myself. And when I call thee, answer me. And if I call thee, and thou dost not reply, thy blood shall flow." Then they both went into the sleeping room, and there stood a still larger stone image of Saint Christopher, and the king's daughter said to it, "If my father calls, do you answer him?" Then the great stone image of Saint Christopher again nodded its head quite quickly, and then more and more slowly, until at last it stood still again. And the king's son lay down on the threshold, put his hand under his head, and slept. The next morning The king said to him, "Thou hast done the business really well, but I cannot give my daughter away. Thou must now watch a night by the youngest princess, and then I will consider with myself whether thou canst have my second daughter to wife. But I shall come every hour myself, and when I call thee, answer me. And if I call thee, and thou answerest not, thy blood shall flow for me." Then they once more went to the sleeping room together, and there was a much greater and much taller image of Saint Christopher than the two first had been. The king's daughter said to it, "When my father calls, do thou answer." Then the great tall stone image of Saint Christopher nodded quite half an hour with its head, until at length the head stood still again, and the king's son laid himself down on the threshold of the door and slept. The next morning the king said, "Thou hast indeed watched well, but I cannot give thee my daughter now. I have a great forest. If thou cuttest it down for me between 6 o'clock this morning and 6 at night, I will think about it." Then he gave him a glass axe, a glass wedge, and a glass mallet. When he got into the wood, he began at once to cut, but the axe broke in two. Then he took the wedge and struck it once with the mallet, and it became as short and as small as sand. Then he was hard troubled, and believed he would have to die, and sat down and wept. Now when it was noon, the king said, "One of you girls must take him something to eat." "No," said the two eldest, "we will not take it to him. The one by whom he last watched can take him something." Then the youngest was forced to go and take him something to eat. When she got into the forest, she asked him how he was getting on. "Oh," said he, "I am getting on very badly." Then she said he was to come and just eat a little. "Nay," said he, "I cannot do that. I shall still have to die, so I will eat no more." Then she spoke so kindly to him and begged him just to try that he came and ate something. When he had eaten something, she said, "I will comb thy hair a while, and then thou wilt feel happier." So she combed his hair, and he became weary and fell asleep. And then she took her handkerchief and made a knot in it, and struck it 3 times on the earth, and said, "Earth workers, come forth." In a moment, numbers of little earthmen came forth and asked what the king's daughter commanded. Then said she, "In 3 hours' time, the great forest must be cut down, and the whole of the wood laid in heaps." So that the little earthmen went about and got together the whole of their kindred to help them with the work. They began at once, and when the 3 hours were over, all was done, and they came back to the king's daughter and told her so. Then she took her white handkerchief again and said, "Earth workers, go home." On this, they all disappeared. When the king's son awoke, he was delighted, and she said, "Come home when it has struck 6 o'clock." He did as she told him, and then the king asked, "Hast thou made away with the forest?" "Yes," said the king's son. When they were sitting at table, the king said, "I cannot yet give thee my daughter to wife. Thou must still do something more for her sake." So he asked what it was to be. Then, "I have a great fish pond," said the king. "Thou must go to it tomorrow morning and clear it of all mud until it is as bright as a mirror, and fill it with every kind of fish." The next morning, the king gave him a glass shovel and said, "The fish pond must be done by 6 o'clock." So he went away, and when he came to the fish pond, he stuck his shovel in the mud, and it broke in two. Then he stuck his hoe in the mud, and broke it also. Then he was much troubled. At noon, the youngest daughter brought him something to eat, and asked him how he was getting on. So the king's son said everything was going very ill with him, and he would certainly have to lose his head. "My tools have broken to pieces again." "Oh?" said she. "Thou must just come and eat something, and then thou wilt be in another frame of mind." "No," said he, "I cannot eat. I am far too unhappy for that." Then she gave him many good words, until at last he came and ate something. Then she combed his hair again, and he fell asleep. So once more she took her handkerchief, tied a knot in it, and struck the ground thrice with the knot, and said, "Earth workers, come forth." In a moment, a great many little earthmen came and asked what she desired, and she told them that in 3 hours' time they must have the fish pond entirely cleaned out, and it must be so clear that people could see themselves reflected in it, and every kind of fish must be in it. The little earthmen went away and summoned all their kindred to help them, and in 2 hours it was done. Then they returned to her and said, "We have done as thou hast commanded." The king's daughter took the handkerchief and once more struck thrice on the ground with it, and said, "Earth workers, go home again." Then they all went away. When the king's son awoke, the fish pond was done. Then the king's daughter went away also, and told him that when it was 6, he was to come to the house. When he arrived at the house, the king asked, "Hast thou got the fish pond done?" "Yes," said the king's son. That was very good. When they were again sitting at table, the king said, "Thou hast certainly done the fish pond, but I cannot give thee my daughter yet. Thou must just do one thing more." "What is that, then?" asked the king's son. The king said he had a great mountain on which there was nothing but briars, which must all be cut down, and at the top of it the youth must build up a great castle, which must be as strong as could be conceived, and all the furniture and fittings belonging to a castle must be inside it. And when he arose next morning, the king gave him a glass axe and a glass gimlet with him, and he was to have all done by 6 o'clock. As he was cutting down the first briar with the axe, it broke off short and so small that the pieces flew all round about, and he could not use the gimlet either. Then he was quite miserable, and waited for his dearest to see if she would not come and help him in his need. When it was midday, she came and brought him something to eat. He went to meet her and told her all, and ate something, and let her comb his hair, and fell asleep. Then she once more took the knot and struck the earth with it, and said, "Earth workers, come forth." Then came once again numbers of earthmen, and asked what her desire was. Then said she, "In the space of 3 hours they must cut down the whole of the briars, and a castle must be built on the top of the mountain, that must be as strong as anyone could conceive. And all the furniture that pertains to a castle must be inside it." They went away and summoned their kindred to help them, and when the time was come, all was ready. Then they came to the king's daughter and told her so, and the king's daughter took her handkerchief and struck thrice on the earth with it, and said, "Earth workers, go home," on which they all disappeared. When therefore the king's son awoke and saw everything done, he was as happy as a bird in air. When it had struck 6, they went home together. Then said the king, "Is the castle ready?" "Yes," said the king's son. When they sat down to take, the king said, "I cannot give away my youngest daughter until the 2 eldest are married." Then the king's son and the king's daughter were quite troubled, and the king's son had no idea what to do. But he went by night to the king's daughter and ran away with her. When they had got a little distance away, the king's daughter peeped round and saw her father behind her. "Oh," said she, "what are we to do? My father is behind us and will take us back with him. I will at once change thee into a briar, and myself into a rose, and I will shelter myself in the midst of the bush." When the father reached the place, there stood a briar with 1 rose on it. Then he was about to gather the rose, when the thorn came and pricked his finger, so that he was forced to go home again. His wife asked why he had not brought their daughter back with him. So he said he had nearly got up to her, but that all at once he had lost sight of her, and a briar with 1 rose was growing on the spot. Then said the queen, "If thou hadst but gathered the rose, the briar would have been forced to come too." So he went back again to fetch the rose, but in the meantime the 2 were already far over the plain. and the king ran after them. Then the daughter once more looked round and saw her father coming, and said, "Oh, what shall we do? Now I will instantly change thee into a church, and myself into a priest, and I will stand up in the pulpit and preach." When the king got to the place, there stood a church, and in the pulpit was a priest preaching. So he listened to the sermon, and then went home again. Then the queen asked why he had not brought their daughter with him. And he said, Nay, I ran a long time after her, and just as I thought I should soon overtake her, a church was standing there, and a priest was in the pulpit preaching. "Thou shouldst just have brought the priest," said his wife, "and then the church would soon have come. It is no use to send thee. I must go there myself." When she had walked for some time and could see the two in the distance, the king's daughter peeped round and saw her mother coming, and said, "Now we are undone. For my mother is coming herself. I will immediately change thee into a fish pond, and myself into a fish." When the mother came to the place, there was a large fish pond, and in the midst of it a fish was leaping about and peeping out of the water, and it was quite merry. She wanted to catch the fish, but she could not. Then she was very angry, and drank up the whole pond in order to catch the fish. But it made her so ill that she was forced to vomit, and vomited the whole pond out again. Then she cried, "I see very well that nothing can be done now," and said that now they might come back to her. Then the king's daughter went back again, and the queen gave her daughter 3 walnuts, and said, "With these thou canst help thyself when thou art in thy greatest need." So the young folks went once more away together, and when they had walked quite 10 miles, they arrived at the castle from whence the king's son came, and close by it was a village. When they reached it, the king's son said, "Stay here, my dearest. I will just go to the castle, and then will I come with a carriage and with attendants to fetch thee." When he got to the castle, they all rejoiced greatly at having the king's son back again, and he told them he had a bride who was now in the village, and they must go with the carriage to fetch her. Then they harnessed the horses at once, and many attendants seated themselves outside the carriage. When the king's son was about to get in, his mother gave him a kiss, and he forgot everything which had happened, and also what he was about to do. On this, his mother ordered the horses to be taken out of the carriage again, and everyone went back into the house. But the maiden sat in the village and watched and watched, and thought he would come and fetch her. But no one came. Then the king's daughter took service in the mill, which belonged to the castle, and was obliged to sit by the pond every afternoon and clean the tubs. And the queen came one day on foot from the castle, and went walking by the pond, and saw the well-grown maiden sitting there, and said, "What a fine, strong girl that is. She pleases me well." Then she and all with her looked at the maid, but no one knew her. So a long time passed by, during which the maiden served the miller honorably and faithfully. In the meantime, the queen had sought a wife for her son, who came from quite a distant part of the world. When the bride came, they were at once to be married. And many people hurried together, all of whom wanted to see everything. Then the girl said to the miller that he might be so good as to give her leave to go also. So the miller said, "Yes, do go there." When she was about to go, she opened one of the 3 walnuts, and a beautiful dress lay inside it. She put it on and went into the church and stood by the altar. Suddenly came the bride and bridegroom and seated themselves before the altar. And when the priest was just going to bless them, the bride peeped half round and saw the maiden standing there. Then she stood up again and said she would not be given away until she also had as beautiful a dress as that lady there. So they went back to the house again and sent to ask the lady if she would sell that dress. No, she would not sell it, but the bride might perhaps earn it. Then the bride asked her how she was to do this. Then the maiden said if she might sleep one night outside the king's son's door, the bride might have what she wanted. So the bride said, yes, she was willing to do that. But the servants were ordered to give the king's son a sleeping drink, and then the maiden laid herself down on the threshold and lamented all night long. She had had the forest cut down for him. She had had the fish pond cleaned out for him. She had had the castle built for him. She had changed him into a briar, and then into a church, and at last into a fish pond. And yet he had forgotten her so quickly. The king's son did not hear one word of it, but the servants had been awakened and had listened to it, and had not known what it could mean. The next morning, when they were all up, the bride put on the dress and went away to the church with the bridegroom. In the meantime, the maiden opened the second walnut, and a still more beautiful dress was inside it. She put it on and went and stood by the altar in the church, and everything happened as it had happened the time before. And the maiden again lay all night on the threshold, which led to the chamber of the king's son, and the servant was once more to give him a sleeping drink. The servant, however, went to him and gave him something to keep him awake. And then the king's son went to bed, and the miller's maiden bemoaned herself as before on the threshold of the door, and told of all that she had done. All this the king's son heard, and was sore troubled, and what was past came back to him. Then he wanted to go to her, but his mother had locked the door. The next morning, however, he went at once to his beloved, and told her everything which had happened to him, and prayed her not to be angry with him for having forgotten her. Then the king's daughter opened the third walnut, and within it was a still more magnificent dress, which she put on and went with her bridegroom to church. And numbers of children came who gave them flowers and offered them gay ribbons to bind about their feet. And they were blessed by the priest and had a merry wedding. But the false mother and the bride had to depart, and the mouth of the person who last told all this is still warm. The blue light. There was once on a time a soldier who for many years had served the king faithfully, but when the war came to an end, could serve no longer because of the many wounds which he had received. The king said to him, "Thou mayest return to thy home. I need thee no longer, and thou wilt not receive any more money, for he only receives wages who renders me service for them." Then the soldier did not know how to earn a living, went away, greatly troubled, and walked the whole day until in the evening he entered a forest. When darkness came on, he saw a light, which he went up to, and came to a house wherein lived a witch. "Do give me one night's lodging, and a little to eat and drink," said he to her, "or I shall starve." "Oh-ho," she answered, "who gives anything to a runaway soldier? Yet will I be compassionate and take you in if you will do what I wish." "What do you wish?" said the soldier. "That you should dig all round my garden for me tomorrow." The soldier consented, and next day labored with all his strength, but could not finish it by the evening. "I see well enough," said the witch, "that you can do no more today, but I will keep you yet another night, in payment for which you must tomorrow chop me a load of wood and make it small." The soldier spent the whole day in doing it, and in the evening the witch proposed that he should stay one night more. "Tomorrow you shall only do me a very trifling piece of work. Behind my house there is an old dry well into which my light has fallen. It burns blue and never goes out, and you shall bring it up again for me." Next day, the old woman took him to the well and let him down in a basket. He found the blue light and made her a signal to draw him up again. She did draw him up, but when he came near the edge, she stretched down her hand and wanted to take the blue light away from him. "No," said he, perceiving her evil intention. "I will not give thee the light until I am standing with both feet upon the ground." The witch fell into a passion, let him down again into the well, and went away. The poor soldier fell without injury on the moist ground, and the blue light went on burning. But of what use was that to him? He saw very well that he could not escape death. He sat for a while, very sorrowfully. Then suddenly he felt in his pocket and found his tobacco pipe, which was still half full. "This shall be my last pleasure," thought. He pulled it out, lit it at the blue light, and began to smoke. When the smoke had circled about the cavern, suddenly a little black dwarf stood before him and said, "Lord, what are thy commands?" "What commands have I to give thee?" replied the soldier, quite astonished. "I must do everything thou biddest me," said the little man. "Good," said the soldier. "Then, in the first place, help me out of this well." The little man took him by the hand and led him through an underground passage, but he did not forget to take the blue light with him. On the way, the dwarf showed him the treasures which the witch had collected and hidden there, and the soldier took as much gold as he could carry. When he was above, he said to the little man, "Now go and bind the old witch and carry her before the judge." In a short time, she, with frightful cries, came riding by as swift as the wind on a wild tomcat. Nor was it long after that before the little man reappeared. "It is all done," said he, "and the witch is already hanging on the gallows." "What further commands has my lord?" inquired the dwarf. "At this moment, none," answered the soldier. "Thou canst return home, only be at hand immediately if I summon thee. Nothing more is needed than that thou shouldst light thy pipe at the blue light, and I will appear before thee at once." Thereupon he vanished from his sight. The soldier returned to the town from which he had come. He went to the best inn, ordered himself handsome clothes, and then bade the landlord furnish him a room as handsomely as possible. When it was ready, and the soldier had taken possession of it, he summoned the little black mannequin and said, "I have served the king faithfully, but he has dismissed me and left me to hunger, and now I want to take my revenge." "What am I to do?" asked the little man. "Late at night, when the king's daughter is in bed, bring her here in her sleep. She shall do servant's work for me." The mannequin said, "That is an easy thing for me to do, but a very dangerous thing for you, for if it is discovered, you will fare ill." When 12 o'clock had struck, the door sprang open, and the mannequin carried in the princess. "Aha! Art thou there?" cried the soldier. "Get to thy work at once. Fetch the broom and sweep the chamber." When she had done this, he ordered her to come to his chair, and then he stretched out his feet and said, "Pull off my boots for me." And then he threw them in her face and made her pick them up again and clean and brighten them. She, however, did everything he bade her without opposition, silently, and with half-shut eyes. When the first cock crowed, the mannequin carried her back to the royal palace and laid her in her bed. Next morning, when the princess arose, she went to her father and told him that she had had a very strange dream. I was carried through the streets with the rapidity of lightning, said she, and taken into a soldier's room, and I had to wait upon him, like a servant, sweep his room, clean his boots, and do all kinds of menial work. It was only a dream, and yet I am just as tired as if I really had done everything. The dream may have been true, said the king. I will give thee a piece of advice. Fill thy pocket full of peas, and make a small hole in it. And then, if thou art carried away again, they will fall out and leave a track in the streets. But unseen by the king, the mannequin was standing beside him when he said that, and heard all. At night, when the sleeping princess was again carried through the streets, some peas certainly did fall out of her pocket, but they made no track, for the crafty mannequin had just before scattered peas in every street there was. And again, the princess was compelled to do servant's work until cock-crow. Next morning, the king sent his people out to seek the track, but it was all in vain, for in every street, poor children were sitting picking up peas and saying, "It must have rained peas last night." "We must think of something else," said the king. "Keep thy shoes on when thou goest to bed, and before thou comest back from the place where thou art taken, hide one of them. There I will soon contrive to find it." The black mannequin heard this plot, and at night, when the soldier again ordered him to bring the princess, revealed it to him, and told him that he knew of no expedient to counteract this stratagem, and that if the shoe were found in the soldier's house, it would go badly with him. "Do what I bid thee," replied the soldier. And again, this third night, the princess was obliged to work like a servant. But before she went away, she hid her shoe under the bed. Next morning, the king had the entire town searched for his daughter's shoe. It was found at the soldier's, and the soldier himself, who at the entreaty of the dwarf had gone outside the gate, was soon brought back and thrown into prison. In his flight, he had forgotten the most valuable things. He had the blue light and the gold, and had only 1 ducat in his pocket. And now, loaded with chains, he was standing at the window of his dungeon, when he chanced to see one of his comrades passing by. The soldier tapped at the pane of glass, and when this man came up, said to him, "Be so kind as to fetch me the small bundle I have left lying in the inn, and I will give you a ducat for doing it." His comrade ran thither and brought him what he wanted. As soon as the soldier was alone again, he lighted his pipe and summoned the black mannequin. "Have no fear," said the latter to his master. "Go wheresoever they take you, and let them do what they will, only take the blue light with you." Next day, the soldier was tried, and though he had done nothing wicked, the judge condemned him to death. When he was led forth to die, he begged a last favor of the king. "What is it?" asked the king. "That I may smoke one more pipe on my way." "Thou mayest smoke 3, answered the king. "But do not imagine that I will spare thy life." Then the soldier pulled out his pipe and lighted it at the blue light, and as soon as a few wreaths of smoke had ascended, the mannequin was there, with a small cudgel in his hand, and said, "What does my lord command? Strike down to earth that false judge there and his constable, and spare not the king who has treated me so ill." Then the mannequin fell on them like lightning, darting this way and that way, and whosoever was so much as touched by his cudgel fell to earth, and did not venture to stir again. The king was terrified. He threw himself on the soldier's mercy, and merely to be allowed to live at all, gave him his kingdom for his own, and the princess to wife. Donkey Cabbages. There was once a young huntsman who went into the forest to lie in wait. He had a fresh and joyous heart, and as he was going thither, whistling upon a leaf, an ugly old crone came up, who spoke to him and said, "Good day, dear huntsman. Truly, you are merry and contented, but I am suffering from hunger and thirst. Do give me an alms." The huntsman had compassion on the poor old creature, felt in his pocket, and gave her what he could afford. I was then about to go further, but the old woman stopped him and said, "Listen, dear huntsman, to what I tell you. I will make you a present in return for your kindness. Go on your way now, but in a little while you will come to a tree whereon 9 birds are sitting, which have a cloak in their claws, and are plucking at it. Take your gun and shoot into the midst of them. They will let the cloak fall down to you. But one of the birds will be hurt and will drop down dead. Carry away the cloak. It is a wishing cloak. When you throw it over your shoulders, you only have to wish to be in a certain place, and you will be there in the twinkling of an eye. Take out the heart of the dead bird and swallow it whole, and every morning early, when you get up, you will find a gold piece under your pillow." The huntsman thanked the wise woman and thought to himself, "Those are fine things that she has promised me, if all does but come true." And verily, when he had walked about 100 paces, he heard in the branches above him such a screaming and twittering that he looked up and saw there a crowd of birds who were tearing a piece of cloth about with their beaks and claws, and tugging and fighting, as if each wanted to have it all to himself. "Well," said the huntsman, "this is wonderful. it has really come to pass, just as the old wife foretold." And he took the gun from his shoulder, aimed, and fired right into the midst of them, so that the feathers flew about. The birds instantly took to flight with loud outcries, but one dropped down dead, and the cloak fell at the same time. Then the huntsman did as the old woman had directed him, cut open the bird, sought the heart, swallowed it down, and took the cloak home with him. Next morning, when he awoke, the promise occurred to him, and he wished to see if it also had been fulfilled. When he lifted up the pillow, the gold piece shone in his eyes. And next day, he found another, and so it went on every time he got up. He gathered together a heap of gold, but at last he thought, "Of what use is all my gold to me? If I stay at home, I will go forth and see the world." He then took leave of his parents, buckled on his huntsman's pouch and gun, and went out into the world. It came to pass that one day he traveled through a dense forest, and when he came to the end of it, in the plain before him stood a fine castle. An old woman was standing with a wonderfully beautiful maiden, looking out of one of the windows. The old woman, however, was a witch, and said to the maiden, "There comes one out of the forest who has a wonderful treasure in his body. We must filch it from him. My dear daughter, it is more suitable for us than for him. He has a bird's heart about him, by means of which a gold piece lies every morning under his pillow." She told her what she was to do to get it, and what part she had to play, and finally threatened her, and said with angry eyes, "And if you do not attend to what I say, it will be the worse for you." Now when the huntsman came nearer, he descried the maiden, and said to himself, "I have traveled about for such a long time, I will take a rest for once, and enter that beautiful castle. I have certainly money enough." Nevertheless, the real reason was that he had caught sight of the pretty girl. He entered the house and was well received and courteously entertained. Before long, he was so much in love with the young witch that he no longer thought of anything else, and only saw things as she saw them, and did what she desired. The old woman then said, "Now we must have the bird's heart. He will never miss it." She prepared a drink, and when it was ready, poured it into a cup and gave it to the maiden, who was to present it to the huntsman. She did so, saying, "Now, my dearest, drink to me." So he took the cup, and when he had swallowed the draught, he brought up the heart of the bird. The girl had to take it away secretly and swallow it herself, for the old woman would have it so. Thenceforward, he found no more gold under his pillow, but it lay instead under that of the maiden, from whence the old woman fetched it away every morning. But he was so much in love and so befooled that he thought of nothing else but of passing his time with the girl. Then the old witch said, "We have the bird's heart, but we must also take the wishing cloak away from him." The girl answered, "We will leave him, that he has lost his wealth." The old woman was angry and said, "Such a mantle is a wonderful thing, and is seldom to be found in this world. I must and will have it." She gave the girl several blows, and said that if she did not obey, it should fare ill with her. So she did the old woman's bidding, placed herself at the window, and looked on the distant country as if she were very sorrowful. The huntsman asked, "Why dost thou stand there so sorrowfully?" "Ah, my beloved," was her answer, "over yonder lies the garnet mountain, where the precious stones grow. I long for them so much that when I think of them, I feel quite sad. But who can get them? Only the birds. They fly and can reach them, but a man never." "Hast thou nothing else to complain of?" said the huntsman. "I will soon remove that burden from thy heart." With that he drew her under his mantle, wished himself on the garnet mountain, and in the twinkling of an eye, they were sitting on it together. Precious stones were glistening on every side, so that it was a joy to see them, and together they gathered the finest and costliest of them. Now the old woman had through her sorceries contrived that the eyes of the huntsman should become heavy. He said to the maiden, "We will sit down and rest a while. I am so tired that I can no longer stand on my feet." Then they sat down, and he laid his head in her lap and fell asleep. When he was asleep, she unfastened the mantle from his shoulders and wrapped herself in it, picked up the garnets and stones, and wished herself back at home with them. But when the huntsman had had his sleep out and awoke, and perceived that his sweetheart had betrayed him and left him alone on the wild mountain, he said, "Oh, what treachery there is in the world," and sat down there in care and sorrow, not knowing what to do. But the mountain belonged to some wild and monstrous giants who dwelt thereon and lived their lives there. And he had not sat long before he saw 3 of them coming towards him. So he lay down as if he were sunk in a deep sleep. Then the giants came up, and the first kicked him with his foot and said, "What sort of an earthworm is lying curled up here?" The second said, "Step upon him and kill him." But the third said, "That would indeed be worth your while. Just let him live. He cannot remain here. And when he climbs higher toward the summit of the mountain, the clouds will lay hold of him and bear him away." So saying, they passed by, but the huntsman had paid heed to their words. And as soon as they were gone, he rose and climbed up to the summit of the mountain. And when he had sat there a while, a cloud floated towards him, caught him up, carried him away, and traveled about for a long time in the heavens. Then it sank lower and let itself down on a great cabbage garden, girt round by walls, so that he came softly to the ground on cabbages and vegetables. Then the huntsman looked about him and said, "If I had but something to eat, I am so hungry, and my hunger will increase in course of time. But I see here neither apples, nor pears, nor any other sort of fruit everywhere. Nothing but cabbages." But at length he thought, "At a pinch I can eat some of the leaves. They do not taste particularly good, but they will refresh me." With that, he picked himself out a fine head of cabbage and ate it, but scarcely had he swallowed a couple of mouthfuls than he felt very strange and quite different. 4 legs grew on him, a large head, and 2 thick ears, and he saw with horror that he was changed into an ass. Still, as his hunger increased every minute, and as the juicy leaves were suitable to his present nature, he went on eating with great zest. At last, he arrived at a different kind of cabbage, but as soon as he had swallowed it, he again felt a change and reassumed his former human shape. Then the huntsman lay down and slept off his fatigue. When he awoke next morning, he broke off 1 head of the bad cabbages and another of the good ones, and thought to himself, "This shall help me to get my own again, and punish treachery." Then he took the cabbages with him, climbed over the wall, and went forth to seek for the castle of his sweetheart. After wandering about for a couple of days, he was lucky enough to find it again. He dyed his face brown so that his own mother would not have known him, and begged for shelter. "I am so tired," said he, "that I can go no further." The witch asked, "Who are you, countryman, and what is your business?" "I am a king's messenger, and was sent out to seek the most delicious salad which grows beneath the sun. I have even been so fortunate as to find it, and am carrying it about with me. But the heat of the sun is so intense that the delicate cabbage threatens to wither, and I do not know if I can carry it any further." When the old woman heard of the exquisite solid, she was greedy and said, "Dear countryman, let me just taste this wonderful salad." "Why not?" answered he. "I have brought 2 heads with me, and will give you one of them." And he opened his pouch and handed her the bad cabbage. The witch suspected nothing amiss, and her mouth watered so for this new dish that she herself went into the kitchen and dressed it. When it was prepared, she could not wait until it was set on the table, but took a couple of leaves at once and put them in her mouth. But hardly had she swallowed them than she was deprived of her human shape, and she ran out into the courtyard in the form of an ass. Presently, the maidservant entered the kitchen, saw the salad standing there, ready, prepared, and was about to carry it up. But on the way, according to habit, she was seized by the desire to taste, and she ate a couple of leaves. Instantly, the magic power showed itself, and she likewise became an ass, and ran out to the old woman, and the dish of salad fell to the ground. Meantime, the messenger sat beside the beautiful girl, and as no one came with the salad, and she also was longing for it, she said, "I don't know what has become of the salad." The huntsman thought the salad must have already taken effect, and said, "I will go to the kitchen and inquire about it." As he went down, he saw the 2 asses running about in the courtyard. The salad, however, was lying on the ground. "All right," said he. "The 2 have taken their portion." And he picked up the other leaves, laid them on the dish, and carried them to the maiden. "I bring you the delicate food myself," said he, "in order that you may not have to wait longer." So then she ate of it, and was like the others, immediately deprived of her human form, and ran out into the courtyard in the shape of an ass. After the huntsman had washed his face so that the transformed ones could recognize him, he went down into the courtyard and said, "Now you shall receive the wages of your treachery," and bound them together, all 3 with one rope, and drove them along until he came to a mill. He knocked at the window. The miller put out his head and asked what he wanted. "I have 3 unmanageable beasts," answered he, "which I don't want to keep any longer. Will you take them in and give them food and stable room and manage them as I tell you, and then I will pay you what you ask?" The miller said, "Why not? But how am I to manage them?" The huntsman then said that he was to give 3 beatings and 1 meal daily to the old donkey, and that was the witch. 1 beating and 3 meals to the younger one, which was the servant girl, and to the youngest, which was the maiden. No beatings, and 3 meals, for he could not bring himself to have the maiden beaten. After that, he went back into the castle and found therein everything he needed. After a couple of days, the miller came and said he must inform him that the old ass, which had received 3 beatings and only 1 meal daily, was dead. "The 2 others," he continued, "are certainly not dead, and are fed 3 times daily, but they are so sad that they cannot last much longer." The huntsman was moved to pity, put away his anger, and told the miller to drive them back again to him. And when they came, he gave them some of the good salad, so that they became human again. The beautiful girl fell on her knees before him and said, "Ah, my beloved, forgive me for the evil I have done you. My mother drove me to it. It was done against my will, for I love you dearly. Your wishing cloak hangs in a cupboard, and as for the bird's heart, I will take a vomiting potion." But he thought otherwise, and said, "Keep it. It is all the same, for I will take thee for my true wife." So the wedding was celebrated, and they lived happily together until their death. Hans my Hedgehog. There was once a countryman who had money and land in plenty, but how rich soever he was, one thing was still wanting. In his happiness, he had no children. Often, when he went into the town with the other peasants, they mocked him and asked why he had no children. At last, he became angry, and when he got home, he said, "I will have a child, even if it be a hedgehog." Then his wife had a child that was a hedgehog in the upper part of his body, and a boy in the lower. And when she saw the child, she was terrified, and said, "See, there thou hast brought ill luck on us." Then said the man, "What can be done now? The boy must be christened, but we shall not be able to get a godfather for him." The woman said, "And we cannot call him anything else but Hans my Hedgehog." When he was christened, the parson said, "He cannot go into any ordinary bed because of his spikes." So a little straw was put behind the stove, and Hans my Hedgehog was laid on it. His mother could not suckle him, for he would have pricked her with his quills. So he lay there behind the stove for 8 years, and his father was tired of him, and thought, if he would but die. He did not die, however, but remained lying there. Now it happened that there was a fair in the town, and the peasant was about to go to it, and asked his wife what he should bring back with him for her. "A little meat and a couple of white rolls, which are wanted for the house," said she. Then he asked the servant, and she wanted a pair of slippers and some stockings with clocks. At last he said also, "And what wilt thou have, Hans my Hedgehog? Dear father," he said, "do bring me bagpipes." When therefore the father came home again, he gave his wife what he had bought for her, meat and white rolls. And then he gave the maid the slippers and the stockings with clocks. And lastly, he went behind the stove and gave Hans my Hedgehog the bagpipes. And when Hans my Hedgehog had the bagpipes, he said, "Dear father, do go to the forge and get the cockshod, and then I will ride away and never come back again." On this, the father was delighted to think that he was going to get rid of him, and had the cock shod for him. And when it was done, Hans my Hedgehog got on it and rode away, but took swine and asses with him, which he intended to keep in the forest. When they got there, he made the cock fly on to a high tree with him, and there he sat for many a long year, and watched his asses and swine until the herd was quite large, and his father knew nothing about him while he was sitting in the tree. However, he played his bagpipes and made music, which was very beautiful. Once, a king came traveling by who had lost his way and heard the music. He was astonished at it and sent his servant forth to look all round and see from whence this music came. He spied about, but saw nothing but a little animal sitting up aloft on the tree, which looked like a cock with a hedgehog on it, which made this music. Then the king told the servant he was to ask why he sat there, and if he knew the road which led to his kingdom. So Hans, my hedgehog, descended from the tree and said he would show the way if the king would write a bond and promise him whatever he first met in the royal courtyard as soon as he arrived at home. Then the king thought, I can easily do that. Hans, my hedgehog, understands nothing, and I can write what I like. So the king took pen and ink and wrote something, and when he had done it, Hans, my hedgehog, showed him the way, and he got safely home. But his daughter, when she saw him from afar, was so overjoyed that she ran to meet him and kissed him. Then he remembered Hans, my hedgehog, and told her what had happened, and that he had been forced to promise whatsoever first met him when he got home to a very strange animal, which sat on a cock as if it were a horse, and made beautiful music, but that instead of writing that he should have what he wanted, he had written that he should not have it. Thereupon the princess was glad and said he had done well, for she never would have gone away with the hedgehog. Hans, my hedgehog, however, looked after his asses and pigs, and was always merry, and sat on the tree and played his bagpipes. Now it came to pass that another king came journeying by with his attendants and runners, and he also had lost his way and did not know how to get home again, because the forest was so large. He likewise heard the beautiful music from a distance, and asked his runner what that could be, and told him to go and see. Then the runner went under the tree and saw the cock sitting at the top of it, and Hans, my hedgehog, on the cock. The runner asked him what he was about up there. I am keeping my asses and my pigs, but what is your desire? The messenger said that they had lost their way and could not get back into their own kingdom, and asked if he would not show them the way. Then Hans, my hedgehog, got down the tree with the cock and told the aged king that he would show him the way if he would give him for his own whatsoever first met him in front of his royal palace. The king said, yes, and wrote a promise to Hans, my hedgehog, that he should have this. That done, Hans rode on before him on the cock and pointed out the way, and the king reached his kingdom again in safety. When he got to the courtyard, there were great rejoicings. Now he had an only daughter who was very beautiful. She ran to meet him, threw her arms round his neck, and was delighted to have her old father back again. She asked him where in the world he had been so long, so he told her how he had lost his way and had very nearly not come back at all, but that as he was traveling through a great forest, a creature, half hedgehog, half man, who was sitting astride a cock in a high tree and making music, had shown him the way and helped him to get out, but that in return he had promised him whatsoever first met him in the royal courtyard, and how that was she herself, which made him unhappy now. But on this she promised that for love of her father she would willingly go with this Hans if he came. Hans, my hedgehog, however, took care of his pigs, and the pigs multiplied until they became so many in number that the whole forest was filled with them. Then Hans, my hedgehog, resolved not to live in the forest any longer, and sent word to his father to have every sty in the village emptied, for he was coming with such a great herd that all might kill who wished to do so. When his father heard that he was troubled, for he thought Hans, my hedgehog, had died long ago, Hans, my hedgehog, however, seated himself on the cock and drove the pigs before him into the village and ordered the slaughter to begin. But there was a killing and a chopping that might have been heard 2 miles off. After this, Hans, my hedgehog, said, "Father, let me have the cock shod once more at the forge, and then I will ride away and never come back as long as I live." Then the father had the cock shod once more, and was pleased Hans, my hedgehog, would never return again. Hans, my hedgehog, rode away to the first kingdom. There the king had commanded that whosoever came mounted on a cock and had bagpipes with him should be shot at, cut down, or stabbed by everyone, so that he might not enter the palace. When therefore Hans, my hedgehog, came riding thither, they all pressed forward against him with their pikes. But he spurred the cock, and it flew up over the gate in front of the king's window, and lighted there. And Hans cried that the king must give him what he had promised, or he would take both his life and his daughter's. Then the king began to speak his daughter fair, and to beg her to go away with Hans in order to save her own life and her father's. So she dressed herself in white, and her father gave her a carriage with 6 horses and magnificent attendants, together with gold and possessions. She seated herself in the carriage and placed Hans, my hedgehog, beside her with the cock and the bagpipes, and then they took leave and drove away, and the king thought he should never see her again. I was, however, deceived in his expectation, for when they were at a short distance from the town, Hans, my hedgehog, took her pretty clothes off and pierced her with his hedgehog skin until she bled all over. "That is the reward of your falseness," said he. "Go your way. I will not have you." And on that, he chased her home again, and she was disgraced for the rest of her life. Hans, my hedgehog, however, rode on further on the cock with his bagpipes to the dominions of the second king, to whom he had shown the way. This one, however, had arranged that if anyone resembling Hans, my hedgehog, should come, they were to present arms, give him safe conduct, cry long life to him, and lead him to the royal palace. But when the king's daughter saw him, she was terrified, for he looked quite too strange. She remembered, however, that she could not change her mind, for she had given her promise to her father. So Hans, my hedgehog, was welcomed by her and married to her, and had to go with her to the royal table. And she seated herself by his side, and they ate and drank. When the evening came and they wanted to go to sleep, she was afraid of his quills. But he told her she was not to fear, for no harm would befall her. And he told the old king that he was to appoint 4 men to watch by the door of the chamber and light a great fire. And when he entered the room and was about to get into bed, he would creep out of his hedgehog's skin and leave it lying there by the bedside, and that the men were to run nimbly to it, throw it in the fire, and stay by it until it was consumed. When the clock struck 11, he went into the chamber, stripped off the hedgehog's skin, and left it lying by the bed. Then came the men, and fetched it swiftly, and threw it in the fire. And when the fire had consumed it, he was delivered, and lay there in bed in human form, but he was coal-black, as if he had been burnt. The king sent for his physician, who washed him with precious salves, and anointed him, and he became white, and was a handsome young man. When the king's daughter saw that she was glad, and the next morning they arose joyfully, ate and drank, and then the marriage was properly solemnized, and Hans, my hedgehog, received the kingdom from the aged king. When several years had passed, he went with his wife to his father, and said that he was his son. The father, however, declared he had no son. He had never had but one, and he had been born like a hedgehog with spikes, and had gone forth into the world. Then Hans made himself known, and the old father rejoiced, and went with him to his kingdom. Bearskin. Once long ago, in a land of war and wandering, there lived a young fellow of sturdy frame and steadfast heart. He had gone to serve as a soldier, and from the first day he bore himself with a courage that startled even his comrades. When bullets whistled and iron rained down like hail from a blackened sky, He was always foremost, his musket steady, his eyes bright and unafraid. Through long marches and bitter winters, he endured, and so long as the war raged, his life had shape and meaning. The clang of swords and the roll of drums were his daily bread, but wars like storms do not last forever. Peace was declared at last, and with the silence of the cannons came dismissal. The captain called him, clapped him on the shoulder, and said, "You have served bravely, lad. Now go where you will." The young man bowed, but his heart sank. His parents were dead, his childhood home sold. No hearth, no roof, no kin awaited him. He turned, therefore, to his brothers, hoping that blood would be warmer than strangers' hearts. "Keep me with you until war comes again," he begged. But his brothers were hard and close-fisted. "What can we do with thee?" they said. "Thou art of no use. Go make a living for thyself." Their words were like cold iron. The door closed upon him. I had nothing left but his old musket. He slung it over his shoulder and went forth into the world, his boots thin, his stomach empty. He wandered across a wide, wind-beaten heath where only a ring of twisted trees broke the horizon. Beneath them, he sat heavy with grief and spoke to himself. "I have no coin," he murmured. "I have learned no craft but that of war. And now they have made peace. None wants me. I see before me hunger and misery." As he sat thus lost in thought, a rustling stirred the leaves. He looked up, and before him stood a stranger, clad in a rich green coat. His face stately, yet strange, and his foot, when it peeped from beneath the hem, was cloven like a goat's. "I know already what thou art in need of," said the man, in a voice smooth as silk and deep as a cavern. "Gold and possessions shalt thou have, as much as thou canst spend. Do what thou wilt. But first I must know if thou art fearless, for I bestow my gifts not in vain. A soldier and fear, how can those two things go together?" cried the young man. "Put me to the proof." "Very well," answered the stranger. "Look behind thee." The soldier turned. Out from the scrub lumbered a bear, huge and shaggy, growling so that the earth trembled. "Oh-ho," shouted the soldier. "I'll tickle thy muzzle, so thou shalt lose thy fancy for growling." He leveled his musket, fired, and the beast fell with a crash and stirred no more. "I see," said the stranger, nodding slowly, "that thou art not lacking in courage. But another condition thou must fulfill, if it endanger not my salvation," replied the soldier, whose blood chilled a little, for he knew well who stood before him. "Then I am willing. If it does, I'll have nothing to do with it. Thou shalt look to that thyself, said the green coat. For the next 7 years thou shalt neither wash thyself, nor comb thy hair or beard, nor cut thy nails, nor utter a single paternoster. In return, I will give thee a coat and a cloak, which thou must wear. If thou diest within the 7 years, thou art mine. If thou livest, thou art free and rich for all thy days. The soldier thought of his emptiness of nights, without bread, of his long comradeship with death in the field. He clenched his jaw, looked the stranger in the eye, and agreed. The devil for such, he was slipped off his green coat and held it forth. If thou wearest this coat, he said, and puttest thy hand into the pocket, thou wilt always find it full of money. Then he stripped the hide from the fallen bear. This shall be thy cloak and thy bed. On it shalt thou sleep, and in no other bed shalt thou lie. Because of it, men shall call thee Bearskin. And with that, the devil vanished like mist. The soldier drew on the green coat and felt in the pocket. Gold clinked there in heaps. He wrapped himself in the bearskin rose and went into the world. He refrained from nothing that pleased him, though his purse groaned, and yet he gave freely to the poor, that they might pray for his life during the 7 dread years. In the first year, his appearance was tolerable. In the second, he began to look monstrous, his hair and beard matted into a wild mane, his fingers hooked like claws, his skin so thick with grime that, as folk said, cress might sprout upon it. People fled at his coming. Yet because he paid richly, and because his alms bought prayers, doors opened to him, even as faces turned away. In the 4th year, he came to an inn. The host, seeing him, would give neither paid nor stall, fearing his horses would be frightened. But Bearskin's hand plunged into his pocket and came up with ducats. The host relented and put him in a lonely outhouse, extracting a promise that no guest should see him, lest the inn gain a bad name. That evening, Bearskin sat alone, longing from the bottom of his heart for the 7 years to pass. Through the thin wall, he heard loud weeping. His heart, though buried under filth and fur, was still compassionate. He opened the door. Inside was an old man, gray-headed and trembling, wringing his hands. At sight of Bearskin, he shrank back in terror, but the soldier spoke gently, and at last the man listened. "My fortune has dwindled away," the old man confessed. "My 3 daughters, and I must starve. I am so poor, I cannot pay the innkeeper, and am to be cast into prison." "If that be all," said Bearskin, "I have gold enough." He summoned the innkeeper, paid every farthing, and pressed a purse full of coins into the old man's hand. The old man, astonished and overjoyed, said, "Come with me. My daughters are each a marvel of beauty. Choose one for thy wife. When she hears what thou hast done, she will not refuse thee. Thou dost indeed look strange, but she will set thee right again." Bearskin went. When the eldest saw him, she shrieked and fled. The second gazed and said, "How can I wed one who has lost his human form? The shaven bear that once came here in a hussar's coat pleased me more, for at least it wore gloves. If it were only ugliness, I might grow used to it." But the youngest said softly, "Dear father, he must be a good man to help you thus. If you have promised him a bride, the promise must be kept." It was pity that Bearskin's face was hidden under hair and grime, else they might have seen his joy. He drew a ring from his finger, broke it, and gave her one half, keeping the other. He wrote his name on her piece and hers on his. "Keep it well," he said. "I must wander 3 years more. If I return, not thou art free, for I shall be dead. Pray God to preserve my life." The poor betrothed dressed herself all in black and wept often. Her sisters mocked her. "Beware, if thou givest him thy hand, he will strike his claws into it. Bears like sweet things. He will eat thee up. Thou must do always as he likes, or he will growl. But at least the wedding will be merry, for bears dance well." She bore their jeers in silence. Meanwhile, Bearskin roamed the world doing good, where he might, scattering gold, so the poor would pray for him. At last, the final day of the 7th year dawned. He went again to the heath and sat beneath the circle of trees. The wind whistled, and the devil appeared scowling. He flung Bearskin the old coat. "Give me back mine," he demanded. "We have not come so far," said Bearskin. "First, make me clean," whether he liked it or not. The devil fetched water washed. Bearskin combed his hair and cut his nails. When he was done, the soldier stood handsome and brave, fairer than he had ever been. Light-hearted, Bearskin went into the town, donned a velvet coat, seated himself in a carriage with 4 white horses, and drove to his bride's house. None knew him. The father took him for a great general and seated him between his 2 eldest daughters. They poured his wine and gave him the choicest meats, thinking never had they seen a handsomer man. The youngest sat opposite in her black dress, eyes cast down silent. At length, he asked the father for one of his daughters. The 2 eldest hurried away to deck themselves, each believing she was the chosen one. The stranger alone with the youngest, dropped his half ring into a glass of wine and handed it to her. She drank, saw the ring at the bottom, and trembled. She drew forth her own half, worn on a ribbon about her neck. The pieces fitted perfectly. "I am thy bridegroom," said he softly, "whom thou sawest as Bearskin. By God's grace, I am a man again." He took her in his arms and kissed her. When the sisters returned in their finery and learned the truth, rage and envy seized them. One threw herself into the well, the other hanged herself upon a tree. That evening, a knock sounded. The bridegroom opened the door, and there stood the devil in his green coat. He smiled with his teeth. "Seest thou," he said, "I have now 2 souls in the place of thy one." And he vanished into the night. Thus ended the tale of Bearskin, who risked filth and shame for 7 years. Yet by steadfastness, almsgiving, and the mercy of God came forth clean, rich, and blessed.